Hello, everybody. This is Chris from Felgrout Productions coming to you with a review of the new, very excited for these, the Wargames Atlantic Grand Battle Scale Samurai and Ashigaru. These are, as far as I am aware, the very first 10 millimeter hard plastic figures available anywhere. There are a couple of companies that produce things that are very close to hard plastic, such as CO cast figures, which are very similar. And then, of course, there are hard plastic from Warlord Games, but those are not 10 millimeter. Those are kind of this awkward 13.5 millimeters. So I'm very excited for these 10 millimeter figures. And again, we'll be using my weighted scoring system that is up on the screen now. Quality of sculpts being the most important with 40%, cost 20%, cleanup and assembly 20%, paintability 20%, and then sometimes I throw a miscellaneous in there with an extra 10%. And we'll be using essentially the American school grading system of A, B, C, D, and F. With the occasional A plus for very rare things. So what we have here, as you can see, there's two boxes right now. We have the Samurai, 224 hard plastic figures, the Ashigaru 328. The only difference between these, because they're both 4 sprues, is the Samurai includes some cavalry and the Ashigaru do not. If we look at the back of the box, this is great. They show you exactly what you're going to get. This is the Samurai box. You get close combat troops. You get 12 of this strip of 5, and they do come in this interesting combination of strips, which I'll show you more closely in a minute. So you get 12 of this strip of 5, for each of these little mini strips and individuals, for each of this set of archers, and then for each of this set of cavalry, plus for each of these casualties. I find that kind of good. I like that the fact that they include casualties. You can put them on bases or use them as tokens. So many ranges don't come with casualties if you want to use them as more narrative, flavorful tokens for your games. The Ashigaru box going to be very similar. No cavalry in here. We have 8 each of these spearmen, or I believe yaris. Some of them are these shorter ones, but most of them are these longer pikes, which we will talk about. For each of these individual guys, bowmen 4 and 8, some more casualties, some handgunners, and then individual handgunners, and then kind of this command figure guy here. Actually, no, he's a handgunner too. And then there's a QR code for painting tips and some really nice art on the front. In fact, when I painted these up, I just painted a couple up very quickly. I painted them up basically just using the key art from the boxes. Now, before we look at the painting, let's first talk about the quality of sculpt. So I have 2 of the sprues here, the Samurai and the Ashigaru. So we'll look at the Samurai first. You can see, again, here's the cavalry in the middle, Samurai, a mix of Samurai archers and with these pole arms. We have the back flags that you can affix to the figures. There's not enough to affix to every single figure, which the art shows. This is the Ashigaru. The Samurai art does show not all of them have it. So I almost thought that all of them had it, but it looks like roughly every other one has them. And on each of these sprues, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. You have 16 back flags. So that should be a decent amount that you could include if you want to. So quality of the sculpts. Let's take a look. So here's one of the strips. You can see this is the biggest strip. It's a strip of 5, and that strip of 5 is going to be, I measured about 30 millimeters wide. So the narrowest base you could put these strips on is going to be 5, and you can't really separate them because the joins between them, you're going to have to start resculpting arms. Even the narrowest joins, like between this guy here with the sword and this guy with the polearm, those elbows are very fused together. These two guys kind of here in the center right, you're never going to be able to separate those. So 30 millimeter bases at a minimum. Then, of course, you've also got groups of 3 and groups of 4. I really like this. One of my biggest complaints about Warlord Games Epic 13.5 millimeter scale figures is that the strips are always 60 millimeters wide, and there is no way to change that. And so whatever game you want to play, whether it's Hail Caesar or Pike and Shot or whatever games you're using them with, your bases are going to be a multiple of 60 millimeters, 60 or 120, which at that point that's a huge base. Even 60 is a fairly large base. So this gives you a lot of variety. You can really make the bases almost as wide or as narrow as you want, as long as you start at 30 millimeters, which quite honestly, anything smaller than that with 10 millimeter figures is getting quite small. Most of the individuals are down here. And again, the quality of these 10 millimeter sculpts are quite good. Measured, by the way, to the eye, obviously every single figure is going to be a little bit different, but I did measure a couple of them, and they average somewhere in the 10 to 11 millimeter range. So close enough to 10 millimeter. They're definitely not oversized. If you have other figures that are like a true 10 millimeter scale, these will mix in. With the one exception that these are definitely more realistically proportioned, whereas I happen to, just very randomly, happen to have some Pendragon Samurai here. And the Pendragons are definitely a true 10 millimeter, sometimes a little bit bigger, but not significantly. And you can see they're more heroic, and the horses are smaller. So could you mix these together? I think you could, especially the infantry. The cavalry for the Wargames Atlantic are bigger, especially because I think it's really mostly because their legs are longer. It's not necessarily the body of the cavalry is bigger, but it's the legs that are longer. So if you mix the cavalry of Pendragon and Wargames Atlantic, it might look a little off. If you mix the infantry, I really don't think that should be a problem. But these sculpts are fantastic. There are some areas where you can notice right here between the left guy's arm and the right guy's kind of his armpit. There is some infill there, which quite honestly, paint it black, paint it dark brown, you'll never notice it. There's not a lot of that, and you're really not going to notice it. These undercuts or whatever they would be called. But these are truly some fantastic figures in terms of quality. Over on the Ashigaru side, again, you also have 16 of these back flags. You come with the spearmen with these shorter pole arms, individual bowmen ranked up, handguns, the long pikes. I think they're called Yari. Don't quote me on that. I'm definitely not an expert. A lot of long pikes. The casualties, more handgunners, individual handgunners, individual archers, individual pikes. Now, with the pikes, I'll come back to that. Quality of sculpts, A. Sculpts are fantastic. They look great. I have no complaints when it comes to the quality of the sculpts. They're really great. Cost. The Ashigaru box is $40. The Samurai box is $35. That math works out to about 14 cents per figure. That is an astounding cost for these figures. I truly can't say how inexpensive that is if you wanted to do 10 millimeter of feudal Japan. That's going to be my first A+. I don't think that's really going to be able to be beat by any other manufacturer. I was doing some math on the Little Wars TV Discord the other day, and Pendragon figures are about, infantry about 24 cents per model, which I consider kind of my baseline. Wargames Atlantic, almost half that. It's amazing. I don't have anything to say about it. Cost is A+. Cleanup and assembly. This is where I'm going to get to what I think is not a fatal flaw, but a major flaw with these. And that is going to be illustrated by these pikemen that I did not paint. You'll notice that these pikes look a little wonky. And the reason for that is right here. Notice these pikemen are missing their pikes. Why are they missing their pikes? Because these pikes are incredibly thin and not brittle, but just very, very fragile. If I pull the sprue back over, notice every single one of these pikes has a bit of sprue attached to it because the plastic has to flow into the channel. And when you start clipping that off, when I was clipping all these pikes off, about 1 in 3 of those pikes snapped off for me. And because the contact point is so small between wherever the pike snaps off, which is usually going to be somewhere down close to where it's affixed to the body, it's very hard to glue it back on. Now, I tried to do that with some sprue glue, which is a mix of plastic glue and sprue, which is why some of these look a little blobby. But these pikes are just so... Yeah, boom, there. These are these are, I'm kind of amazed that this thing survived getting cut off. These individual ones are some of the hardest, but almost any use, I feel like these pikes are going to break. Maybe the strips of 5, they're going to be more durable because there's a lot of pikes to resist that. But these individual guys, these two, I have a sneaking suspicion these pikes are not going to be long for this world. Some of the samurai spears, some of these really upraised swords, they're a little thin. I think they should be okay. I also think I didn't break any of these, but the only point of contact between these horses and their integrated base is 2 ankles, and these legs are quite skinny. So I'm really worried about the long-term durability of some of these figures. Now, other figures, the handgunners, came off absolutely without a problem. I cut some of these archers off. Now, these archers were fine, totally fine, because the bows were relatively short. But some of the other bow figures, if I can find one. Yeah, this one. I did not cut him off, but I'm worried that some of these are going to break. Probably less than the pikes. The pikes are the biggest issue, but I'm a little worried about the archers. So cleanup and assembly. Mold lines, I haven't mentioned them because there are none. They're amazing. Assembly, there's not really any assembly here. The cleanup and the breaking of the pikes, and then also, even if you get the pikes off without breaking them, there will be a little nub of sprue on there, and cleaning it up is also almost impossible, because if you try to clean it off with a hobby blade, I ended up breaking the pike. So that's why I tried to use sprue glue. If you look at many of my pikes, there's a little bit of sprue kind of hanging off them. It's a little bit hidden because I primed them. But I'm a little bit worried about that. I'm going to give cleanup and assembly a D, unfortunately. And again, I just want to emphasize, quality sculpts, A. Cost, A+. Cleanup and assembly is a D, and it's really just a D for the pikes, the long spears, maybe the long bows. That's kind of it. Everything else, I'm pretty happy with. It's just that's a pretty significant flaw. Finally, paintability. So I just painted up basically what would amount to 2 bases. If I like 40mm squares, one of Cavalry Samurai and one of the Handgunner Ashigaru. And I think I just basically copied the box art for some of these. I think they painted up fantastically. They don't have too much detail on them. Put a little back flag on him. These spears did not break. They're a little shorter than the pikes. But they painted up well. The face is a little bit detailed. I used a base coat, wash, and a highlight. There's enough definition between the kind of the ridges of the plates where this guy, I did not do any highlighting on this guy. That's just a wash into a dark gray armor plate. So it really picks out the armor plates pretty well. I did do a little bit of highlights with this dark blue. Obviously, this kind of like bumblebee armor, and the red guy picked out some of those highlights. But you could definitely get away without picking out too many highlights if you want to. I used contrast on the horses, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with these. Same thing with these handgunners. The ones that are molded together, they're molded together in a way that there's really not many details that are hard to access. There's not parts of them like with the Warlord Games Civil War figures, the Epic Civil War figures. There were things that were on their belt that I had no idea what they were supposed to be. Pouches, canteens, it was just like kind of an indistinct blob of plastic. On here, everything is pretty obvious. They're holding their matchlock rifles, they've helmets, armor, pants, boots. It's all pretty obvious. The single guys, either standing or kneeling, they all look pretty good. Very easy to paint. Definitely an A for paintability. So that brings us to the final score. So again, quality of sculpts is an A. Cost is an A+. Truly astounding cost. You could buy one of each of these boxes, be in for $75, and probably have one or even both sides of samurai battles, depending on how big a battle you want to do. Cleanup and assembly, the only unfortunate D due to these very fragile pikes, and that's really, again, just the pikes. If those pikes were not so breakable, everything else is an A, but that's just the issue. Paintability in A, averaging all that out, that gives us a 90%, which is an A-. The highest score I've given so far, I've only done a couple videos, but These are definitely A quality or A minus quality figures with a bit of an asterisk for the pikemen. Just be very careful with them. Very careful, and be willing to accept that they're going to break. If you have any questions, leave them down in the chat below. There is going to be a link. It is actually an affiliate link to Wargames Atlantic. And they did send me this as a review copy. However, if you stay this long, I'm going to be giving both of these boxes away to someone who comments down below. I'm going to leave this open just for people in the United States, so shipping does not go crazy. I'm going to pay for shipping. They are yours. If you like my painted ones, they're yours. If you don't, I'll just put them on my shelf. But comment down below and let me know what you think about these figures. Everybody have a great rest of your day.